kind of get the kinks out, make sure this live streaming works. And it looks like it's doing well. So welcome. This is SideGame LLC. I'm Mackenzie Franklin, and this is my special guest. My brother's joining us. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jordan Franklin, Mackenzie's older brother, also a fellow board game player.
Fantastic. So yes, Jordan and I live on different sides of the United States here, but we're excited to share our passion of gaming with everybody here. So specifically, I brought Jordan on today in order to talk about our favorite two-player games. It's the type of game that Jordan plays the most, and actually, this is the type of game I play the least. So I'm curious to see where these two kind of mix. Any thoughts on this, Jordan?
Yeah, for me, I think it's applicable because people are in quarantine. You know, they're looking for top two-player games because they've got, they're stuck with maybe somebody else or someone else who enjoys playing, or they can convince somebody else to play. So these would be things that I would point to. I've got my top five, your top five. I do a runner-up, just as a highlight. I want to throw it out there, but yeah.
Excellent. So the way I approached my list this time was I actually focused on mainly two-player competitive games. I generally play cooperative games at the two-player count, but I've covered that a lot in my cooperative lists. So this one I wanted to focus on games where I'm like, yes, I get to play. It's my two-player game day. I'm with my bud, and this is the two-player game I really want to play because with my wife, I don't get to play any competitive games. We keep our relationship pretty nice by just playing co-ops. So when I get a chance to play a two-player game with somebody that's competitive, these are the ones that I usually gravitate towards.
Okay, so that's a good criteria. For mine, there's a mix. There's kind of like this cozy, kind of you feel like, oh, I'm kind of like building something and we're doing it together, but you're still scoring points at the end of the time. And then there are some more competitive head-to-head strategy based. You know, as long as you're following what they're doing, you can counter their move. So it's kind of got a mix of those things in this list.
Perfect. Thanks, Jordan. Without further ado, let's get started with number 10. So Jordan, go ahead and start us off first. What is your number 10?
So my number 10 is Lewis and Clark. The expedition game. So this one is very thematic. It is a racing game and a card drafting game. You are trying to get to the end of the Pacific. You're trying to get to the end of the Lewis and Clark Trail. You're recruiting characters along the way that you're drafting as you go along, and they're going to be resources. It's a worker placement as well, so you're going to be using your guys. You recruit Indians from the board, or you can recruit, or you have resources that you're going to spend to be able to convert into movement as you race along the river to get to the northwest, or you race along the Northwest Passage to get to the other side. So coming up, number 10.
Fantastic.
Do you play this game ever?
So I've played this once actually with you. This was actually my first worker placement game, and it's before I even knew what that mechanic was. I know there's that action where you are going to take the Native Americans and you'll be kind of assigning them to different things. Mm-hmm. And they're helping you activate stuff. But the more you use, I honestly don't remember a lot about this, but I remember that the artwork is wonderful. I remember that it had some mechanics that I had never seen at the time. This was maybe 5-6 years ago. And it was a really unique game. I think this is a great choice.
That's where I think that it makes my list, because the artwork is so strong. The theme is so strong. It is competitive, but you're not necessarily, there's other stuff to do on the board. So it's not like you're, especially a two-player, and I think that's really why I put it on this list. A two-player, it's really strong because you're not as competitive. You're not it's not sniping the other player. Once you get into 3-4 player, you're really limiting the amount of things that you can do. So it does become more strategic of taking away maybe the guys that you're recruiting, or a spot on the board that for your worker placements. So you have to be a little more conservative about how you play. Additionally, there's a little bit less planning as you go along with more players because things cycle a little bit faster. And so with 2 players, it is a little bit more strategic, I'd say.
That's excellent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you're able to actually plan for things as opposed to playing on the tactical side. That sounds great. Yeah. All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
Mine number 5. Mine the number 10 overall.
Awesome. So my number 5 is, so number 9 on our list here, is going to be a game that is really popular and pretty memed. I don't know if you've ever joined the board game CG page on Reddit. They like to use this game as like the butt of their jokes all the time. I think it's wonderful. It always cracks me up. But the game itself is pretty great. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about here?
No.
People obviously lead with this a lot. I can't recommend it enough. And this is actually going to be Patchwork. So Patchwork is a very simple tile laying game. So let me see if I can. So sorry again, guys. We're trying to get
came out in 2020. Is that right?
This did not come out in 2020. This is like a super old game. So let me see if I can find it here.
Oh, I'm thinking maybe Calico.
You're thinking Calico. That's another kind of quilt game. This one does not feature cats. So Patchwork came out in 2014. So this is about 7 years ago now. Jeez, it really dates us now. But this is Patchwork. So Patchwork has you constructing these quilts using polyomino tiles, and you'll be using all of these different images to kind of construct this complete square before another person can. So I find the game itself to be very well paced. It has you choosing between 3 tiles every turn. So your choices are pretty limited, but there's a lot to think about because you can choose a tile based on its shape. You can choose a tile based on its cost. And it's really cool because there's 2 costs in this game. There's buttons, which are actually points, and then there's time. So you can either pay for things using a lot of time, and it might be a really big piece, or you need that exact specific piece that you need, and it might cost a lot of buttons or time. And it's really interesting kind of balancing the 2 decision points there. So I really like the way Patchwork presents those decisions. The artwork is hilarious. The presentation of all of these different weird patchwork tiles, and they're all coming together to make this quilt. I think the theming is great. It makes a lot of sense because these are real things. And you can kind of see in this picture here, you can see the mix of the button and the time cost. Oh my gosh, a little too zoomed in. Sorry, not as eloquent.
You want to build a quilt? Go actually make one?
So I have no interest in quilting. I've tried this before, and I'm not a fan of anything where I have to keep my hands steady and I have like literal consequences if I mess up. So quilting is one of those things.
As close as you're gonna get.
This is as close as I'm gonna get. Yeah. Have you played this one, Jordan?
I haven't. How does this compare to like Carcassonne as a tile placement game?
So Carcassonne has
Azul as kind of like a you're building sets. How does it compare to those?
So in this one, it's a lot more freeform. You have this grid, and your job is to fill this grid. It doesn't continue on forever. In Azul, you're only able to take a little bit of tiles at a time, and you can just freeform take them. There's no resource conversion or anything you have to pay. In this game, you have resource management, the time and the buttons, and you have a set goal. It's, I need to fill this thing because each one that you have left over is -2 points. So you really want to fill this the best you can. Now, there's legends I've heard of people filling the whole thing, but I've never done it myself, and it sounds like a pretty awesome feat if you can manage to fill this whole thing by the end. I've seen pictures of it, and it looks cool, but who knows if it's real. But big fan of this, big fan of Patchwork, and awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump to our number 4s. So I actually put the wrong picture up earlier. It was a number 10 instead of a number 4 because we're doing our top 5s. So sorry about that, everybody. Once again, it's all about practice here. I'm seeing how this works. It's my first time doing this, so let's go ahead and bring up our number 4s.
All right. So I have Japer.
Hey.
So, Japer is a hand management, set collection, card drafting type game. You go to market, you're looking for gems or gold or rubies or silks. You're trying to make sets of those before your opponent gets sets of those. So you each go back and forth, getting from the market. You can only have so many cards in your hand. and their game is set by once you've traded in those sets for points. There's only so many points you can get. So once you've made enough trades, then that round is over. And so it's a best 2 out of 3 type game. It's quick. It has beautiful artwork as well. The mechanics are simple, yet the strategy is enough where it's got a lot of replayability. So this is one I'd recommend. I was actually at a coffee shop. We were playing Harbor, and a guy comes over. He's watching. He's like, "Oh yeah, that looks like a cool game. I've never seen that game." But my favorite 2-player game is JPER. So you guys should try it out. So tried it out. Great game. Had it for, I don't know, 7+ years or something like that. So still playing it. It's got good replayability. So
yeah, and they just reprinted this one too with the artist that did Lewis and Clark. Go figure.
Go figure.
So it's a great game. This is another one that you introduced me to. So pretty cool. We played this at Gen Con, and that was a blast. It's one that has stuck around in the collection. I find this as it's a great 2-player game that gives me a similar feel to something like Splendor, where you're collecting tokens, and it's just got that nice tactile feeling of
that's a good comparison.
You're trading in those things, the cards, for tokens. But like you said, I think this has great back and forth play, and the fact that it's quick and easy to bring with you, it really will stick around, this one.
Yeah, I think kind of contrast to my number 5. And number 5 is it's a heavier game, especially as you get to more players. But at 2-player, it kind of limits that heaviness. But you're not taking it anywhere. This one you can bring to a bakery or coffee shop and play it in 15 minutes or something. So
I totally agree. Now, I'm curious, what are your opinions on the camel strat? Like just controlling the market with camels the whole time. Like I've seen people play this game, and every time a camel pops up, they'll take it just so that they can like take these big windfall turns. Have you done anything like this, or do you just kind of play the game as it comes out?
A lot of my early strategy is taking the number 5 point value, so the highest point value token, right away. So in the lower ranked resources, there are 3 of them, and then there are 3 high ranked resources where like pretty much every single one of the token cards that you take is worth a lot of points. So if you go and you snipe the top one, it makes it less incentive to get it to go for those lesser tokens. So yeah, you can see here in your photo that you've got up, you've got browns, you've got greens, you've got purples, and then you've got the real expensive gems, gold, silver, and then these rubies. So they try to incentivize you to take multiple at a time by giving you bonus tokens if you take 3 cards or 4 cards or 5 cards. Gold, silver, and then and so the incentives there. But if you just take the number, the top token for trading in a green silk, that's 5 points right away. And so as far as the camels go, I'd rather not worry about the camels until the end. And if I get 5 extra points for having camels, great. If not, I'm already kind of just taking stuff, and I'll have stuff to trade later on. So
I gotcha. It honestly kind of sounds like you just like ruining people's combos or fun, getting all those skimming off those high point values. Seems kind of rude.
It's interesting because then whoever you're playing against goes and does that, and then you're both like, okay, well maybe I will save up for the 3. So it kind of depends, how you're countered against it. So.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. Awesome. I think this is a great choice. I love how quick the gameplay is. I love just the feeling of playing it. Comboing cards and collecting it's fun. So great choices, Jordan. So that's number 4 for Jordan, Jaipur. All right. And then my number 4 is going to be for a game that is also a very highly allotted 2-player only game. So this one has 2 expansions already. It's got a wonderful civilization building theme. It has a great drafting mechanism, and the new expansions add more control, more ways to win, and more variability in the turns. Any idea what I'm talking about?
I'm guessing it's Duel.
You are totally correct.
7 Wonders Duel, yeah.
It is 7 Wonders Duel. So 7 Wonders Duel is one that I love to bring out. because this is one that I don't get to play often. And they did introduce a solo mode of this game with the base alone. But the expansions, I think, are just so good that you should be playing with them. So Seven Wonders Duel is super highly rated. It's higher rated than the original Seven Wonders, and there's a clear reason why. The drafting and the quick back and forth is really cool. It's kind of like a mahjong style where cards are covering other cards. You can only access the ones at the top, and you're taking cards to do multiple things with them. So it incorporates multi-use cards. It's a quick, snappy game. It has lots of player powers that are also drafted. And so you have lots of choice, lots of variability in the way the cards come out, in the cards that each player is going to draft at the beginning to set up their strategies. And the newest expansion, Agora, adds these plot cards that are super dastardly. They have some of the most powerful abilities I've ever seen, but they take 2 turns, so 2 entire turns to set up and prepare. But once you do that, you can kind of spin them at any time. So it's really fascinating how they added these new mechanics to this game and how it continues to develop. And this is one that I don't like to paint miniatures, but I painted these because they were tiny and they're very easy to do. So any opinions on this one, Jordan?
Yeah, I have Pantheon, the first expansion for this.
Yes.
I think that kind of revamped it and added some additional variability to it. Totally agree that I like this better than the Seven Wonders, the non-dual version. Whatever they did to make it just 2-player, and it's very competitive still, but it still retains all those core mechanics from the original game. The Seven Wonders itself does have an iOS app, which is really nice and very fluid. But even comparing that, this one I would say is just a nicer play.
And a lot of games have taken the idea of using that central pyramid, and this one here, the cards laid on top of each other. There's a newer one that just came out about the Lincoln trial. I think it's called Unforgiven. It takes that same idea, but this one definitely pioneered this style of multi-use cards through that pyramid fashion. And I think it's super strong. My favorite way to win this game is by the alternative win conditions. I don't think I've ever won this game using points, ever. I never try to do it, so I think it's a really fun challenge to kind of force your opponents into positions where they have to either take science or military just to prevent you from winning, and sometimes you're just so strong that you have both science and military. So I think this game is a lot of fun to play. I love the challenge, and I love just the variety of different abilities that you can play and counterplay towards.
I do like the variability. That's something in like the Lewis and Clark that I like, is that you never really see the same cards because there's so many different characters. And so when a game has that kind of variability, I really enjoy that.
Absolutely. Awesome. So that is our number 4. Let's go ahead and jump to number 3. So number 3, go ahead and start us off, Jordan. What do you got?
I've got Santorini, number 3.
Hey.
So this is one, it's a very just back and forth. You move, build. Just go back and forth, and you're trying to make a tower, and you want to get your guy on the 3rd level. So it's a very simple concept. You can play it that way, and I'm sure it's based on some game that was originally like that. The twist with Santorini is the inclusion of god cards. And the God card twist is really what makes the game. Again, it has that layer of variability. You're not sure who you're going to play with this time, so you've got to adjust. You don't know who your opponent's playing with. You have to adjust. They've got all types of powers, whether it's moving all the way across the board or a certain win condition like Kronos, where if you've got 4 or 5 blue toppers on the playing field, then that's game over. So there's a lot of kind of variability on win conditions that are introduced with the god cards as well. So it keeps it from getting stale in that sense. I have tried to play it with the without god cards. I've got a little mini version, that 3D printable version, and if you don't bring the god cards with it, it loses a lot of its playability. So the replayability, again, a lot of these games that I'm choosing are for their replayability. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Theme is a big thing for me as well. Good artwork, but replayability is what really makes it a good two-player game.
So I love what you're saying about this. I do love the god cards in this game. So I think, like you were saying, you have two gods that you've never matched before. How are they going to fare? What are they going to do to each other? One might have an advantage. We'll see, right? So I think that's the strength of this game, in my opinion, is those god cards as well. They've even taken this idea, and the designer has made a new game recently, Ragnarok's. It's set, instead of in Greece, it's in the Norse area. But it's taking that same idea of having this abstract core game and including god powers to switch things up. Now, I don't really like this game personally. I got this one a long time ago, and I tried to play it over and over and over again. But the perfect information in this game is really its detriment, in my opinion. And this is just a me problem. I don't like games with perfect information or with where you can sit there and think forever on your turn and plan out your entire game. And whoever does that more is going to probably win because they took longer and thought about it. I'm more into games where you're thinking on your feet and you're playing more tactically. So, and you'll see that on my list as we continue.
Yeah, I would say for this game and for a few of these games, you can do maybe a lot of games in general. I think a lot of playing with a good two-player match is having someone maybe willing to not take forever and not think too much, and so you kind of get better at doing that the more that you do that. And this is a game that plays better when you don't think too much. I also find myself when we play this game, it's ooh, I didn't think about that. Can I take that move back? So there's like sometimes it's like, oh well, no, I just won, or you're like, okay, I'm gonna count that as a win, but like go ahead. I also want it to be more competitive. So like you tell the other person, yeah, go ahead and take that back. I would rather not win by you just like missing something. So there's some of that give and take as well, which I think makes it a better game as well.
I think that totally makes sense. You kind of chalk up like a asterisk. Continue.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're only like 10 turns in, I guess, and there's not much on the board. But I guess, and because there's that variability with what is their god power. You're like, oh, I got your god power or something.
Yeah. I think the abrupt endings also kind of killed this game for me, but I love the pieces in this game. I love the presentation. I love the Mr. Cuddington artwork here.
Mr. Cuddington artwork is great. He does title blades, which that artwork, probably one of my favorite art, right? Won 2020 like best artwork, right? So that's probably one of my favorite artworks.
Should be winning 2020's best artwork. That game is, I think I read somewhere recently that it's a video game. It's the most video gamey board game ever with the same development into the artwork and world that a video game has received. And I think that's totally...
It's got lots of cool concept kind of art. It's got the kind of the history stuff that's in the deluxe version. And even in the regular version, I think it's got like a lore book or something. So
you talking about Santorini has got me excited to play more Title Blades. So I'll take that as a win.
So cool. Title Blades I would put on here too, except for the Automata. The Automata is interesting, but I do enjoy Title Blades as well.
Awesome. So my number 3 here is going to be a abstract game, actually. So very similar in line with your Santorini game. But my abstract game has a factor of luck in addition to the positioning of pieces on the board. And I think that imperfect information is what gives it its strength. Any ideas what I'm talking about here?
Yeah. What do you got?
So this game is called War Chest. So War Chest is my favorite abstract, like pure abstract game. This incorporates the idea of using pieces in order to take control of command points. But if it was just that, I'd probably not care about this game. Now, the difference this game incorporates is it has you using these chips here, and you're going to be bag building using chips. So every turn, you're going to start with one of each of your crew, your chips. So you're going to have 4 different colors that will be your command. You'll have 4 in your bag plus your basic chip. And on your turn, you can use each chip to either buy a new chip. You can use it to summon the actual chip on the board so it leaves your bag and enters the game. Or you can use a chip of the same color, the same type, to activate a chip that's already on the board. So I can use my pink chip to activate my pink dude, or I could summon another pink dude and maybe bolster my forces. Or you can even add a chip to another one of the same color to give it more health. So it's really interesting. You have multi-use chips, which I don't know if you see the theme here, but I really like multi-use things. Multi-use chips, so you can use these to do various tasks, but the more of the chips that you commit to the board, the less you'll be able to activate them when you're actually playing. And I think that's really fascinating. I think it's really well done. And the fact that you don't know what you're going to get personally and what your opponent's going to get adds so much tension to this game where you can make super risky plays and be like, I don't think you got it. I don't think you got the chip. I'm going for this super cool play, and I got to deal with the consequences if I mess up. And I think that's super neat. Each chip has an ability that makes it unique and different. So very similar to Santorini, you're going to have different abilities each game that you'll be bringing in, and the combination between them adds a whole lot of fun to this game.
100% agree. This is one of my favorite games at 2-player or at any, this is, you can play at 2, 3, 4, or 2 or 4, I think.
2 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy this game at 2-player as well. Like you were saying, the interaction, being able to get 4 different chips, and each of them is unique. The interaction of those chips with each other is also unique. So you go and maybe you just only swap one of the chips and you get a new one. It's a different game. In addition, I like that risk factor. So that risk factor where you're like, I don't think you have it, or you're like, like they've got another pull, and they've got some chips down, and you're not sure, and you're like, I'll do it. Oh well.
It makes me think about playing chess, and the queen is right there next to the king. You could move next to the queen and hope he can't move the queen next turn. Sure, he could. He probably will kill you if he can, but there's a chance he might not be able to move the queen next turn, and you might be able to win it with your little pawn. So it's really cool. I really like that idea.
That's exactly how I feel about this game. It's almost like a better chess, a more fun chess, a more variable chess. Being able to, I like the tactile feel, similar to chess, like being able to actually have these like heavy tokens. So the replayability is there as well. I do have like favorite guys that when you like, a lot of times we don't do like a draft, it's just like a random on who gets what. So like when you do pull that good guy, you're like, oh yeah, this guy's good. The horses are good.
I love the scout personally. I like just rushing. I love just going in as fast as I can, and the scout's really good. He can go next to your pieces, so he gets basically a free movement.
The movement, which is great.
Oh my gosh, the mercenary is so good. When you buy chips of his color, you get to move him for free.
You just get an action. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, great game.
Awesome game. I hope that you're going to talk about it more. So I think it's wonderful. Without further ado, let's go ahead and move on to our number twos.
All right. All righty. So this is one I'm gonna let you guess.
Awesome.
I think I've talked to it before, but it's kind of a cozy game. It's a drafting game as well. You're building your little paradise, I suppose. You've got people you've got to satisfy, and along the way, you've got beautiful artwork that you're looking at. And any idea?
I think I know what this is. I think it's a new addition to your collection. I think this is Santa Monica. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So cozy feeling because you're like, oh, like this is my boardwalk that I'm building. The artwork, color palette, this kind of pastels, they're great. The 2-player, it goes a little bit quickly. You've got, again, that kind of more strategy focus because things aren't going as fast. So you can kind of plan ahead. Like there are some incentives to take cards over other cards. But you can really kind of focus on, I'm going to have a lot of tourists and forget the locals, and I can kind of build chains together. Or I want all monuments, and I'll get a shark sighting later on. And it really plays the beach theme pretty well, I think. I live in Florida, so you see this kind of like what things are on the beach. And they've got, these little tourist traps. They've got places for locals. They've got these apartments. So the theme really shines through. So cool. Yeah, it's a cool game.
I love this. They're little cameras on the guys. This is wonderful.
Yeah. So those are the tourists, and then the ones that are blue, those are the locals. And at the end of the game, you got to move everyone around. You do get like some extra moves. And there are things that each of the groups can do, and you've got kind of a mix. So like you want to get people into a beach volleyball game, or you want to get people on the beach sitting in chairs, and so getting these people into those designated spots at the end of the game gives you extra points. But if they're not in there, you could potentially lose points for not having them. So there's this incentive and balance of, I need guys, but I also don't want too many because I know I got to move them. You also have this VIP guy who's on your starting board, and so your starting board can change game to game, but he's got a different objective. Maybe he's going to go visit all the historical monuments in town, or he's going to visit all the tourist traps. So he wants to go to all those, and you get points for each of those. So on here, those are the green tokens that you see here. So, yeah, so he's walking around and he's leaving little footprints of where he's going. So those are the green tokens.
Awesome. This looks like a lot of fun. You're selling me on this game.
It's good. The replayability is there too, because it has that. If there's one of those pictures, so you've got a lot of cards, so you're not always seeing the same stuff. But there are these special abilities that you can spend seashells on. So during the game, you might collect what's equivalent to like the currency in this, which are seashells, and you can trade in seashells to do a different action. So you can move people and maybe get 2 cards instead of 1, or you can use a single seashell and refresh something. So there's different things that you can do with your ability, but there's only 2 abilities per game. And they're always the same, and everyone can use them. There's also different end of game point scoring calculations. So each game you can change what those are, and that's something I'd like to see in the expansion, is like more of those end of game conditions. Right now there's only 3. I think there's 6 or 8 different seashell variants. So, but there's still a good amount of combinations. Good replayability at this point.
Excellent. This sounds like a blast. This sounds like one that I need to get played. I need to try. And so this came out last year. Where would this be in your best games from last year, you think?
Best games from last year. This is probably number 1 on my best games from last year. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the number 2 on 2-player games right now.
Cool. And you play mostly 2-player games, so that makes
play a lot of 2-player. So yeah.
So you're giving me a hint, though. Number 1 is probably not a 2020 game. This is what I'm gathering from this.
It's not. No.
Okay. Thanks so much for sharing about that. That was awesome. Oh,
all right. What do you got?
Great. So my number 2 is a game that, whenever I hear that I'm going to play a 2-player game with somebody, this is one that I'm like, oh, I hope that I can play this game with them. This is one that is very thematic. It's very divisive amongst the community of people that have purchased it or have played it. But it has a specific mode that is only for 2 players. It's called the Versus mode. And this game has you taking control of a team and going against another person's team. So it's a skirmish-style game, but the way that they implement the combat and everything has to deal with a river. So this is a river system. I'm just go ahead and go and show you what the game is. This is Batman Gotham City Chronicles. So a lot of people have a lot of issues with this game, mainly with the rule book. But I think what they do with the Versus mode of this game is amazing. So each player is able to pick up their own team of superheroes versus supervillains. You're going to have 2 main heroes or villains, and you can pick and choose what you see fit. The hero you pick to be your leader has some really cool ability that you can use during the game. This last game I played, I was playing, I just watched the Harley Quinn series, so I was playing Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, and I picked Poison Ivy as my leader, and her ability was she could kiss one of my opponents, and I could control them for a turn. And it was great. It was super fun and super straightforward, exactly what it sounded like. And you are going off on a mission of some sort. And it's got its own scenario book, so each mission is different. It's not just about brawling and beating up the other person. It's about completing these missions and using your characters appropriately. And this is a game where it will take a little bit to learn. You'll have to say, okay, I need to build my people appropriately. I need to get some guys that are going to be good at, defusing bombs. I'll need a person that can run really well so that she can kind of get through things. So Harley Quinn being the gymnast, she was pretty good at doing that. So it was pretty nice. But the biggest draw to the Batman versus mode, though, is the way you're actually going to be using your actions. So in Batman, you have what's called a command board, I think is like the official term for it. I don't know if I can find a good picture of it. Let's see here. Okay, here is a decent picture of it, I guess. This command board sits in front of you and holds the tiles that basically correspond to the different characters you have on the board. So you can kind of see them there on the side there. This is not a very good shot of it. Let's see if I can go to their Kickstarter.
It looks like the theme shines through a lot.
And that's the biggest strength, in my opinion, is the theme here. You feel like you are these characters. You feel like you are doing exactly what it says. Let's see. I
think I have a guess at what your number 1 2-player game is, Len.
You think so?
I think I do, based on your selection for number 2.
Really? I'm curious to know what you think. Okay, this is what it looks like. So this is the command board. So the command board has you placing all your tiles inside, and it has 2 sections. The first section here is for your energy cubes. This is how you're going to be performing actions. So you can, to activate a tile, if you want to activate this first one, it costs 1 energy cube. If you want to activate the second one, it costs 2 energy cubes, so on and so forth. Whenever you use one of these tiles, though, you can actually pop it out of the command center. So you got to push it, it comes out, and you put it at the end. So if you want to use the people in the front of your command board a bunch of times, it'll be cheaper. But if you want to keep on using the same guy multiple times, it'll cost you more energy cubes. So you have to kind of pick and choose how long you want to wait until they kind of slide back. You can also do interesting things where you can recall units, so you can just pull them all off the board to remove the tile, so that way everything else in your board becomes cheaper. Or you can, when certain people die, if you lose all the units of a specific group, they'll go to the end. And so in the main version of this game, the villain plays with the command board, and the heroes, they play with this smaller hero board. But in the 2-player version, each player has their own command board, and they're kind of managing their whole army on this system. And it's super fun. I love the way that it works. I love that it's very easy to track the health on units because most of them just have 1 health. And the gameplay itself it's great. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of dice rolling, but this is a game where it's a skirmish game where you are going to be rolling a lot of dice, and it's just a lot of fun. I really like this one, and this is one that I like to play with people that will enjoy it. But I only get to pull it out when it's those 2 people. So it's very hard for me to ever get a game of this in with 2.
How long does a typical game take?
So the game itself takes maybe around 35 to 45 minutes. It's rather short. The longest part is the setup, because you want to pick your units, you want to pick up a map, the board, all that stuff, and then getting out the actual miniatures and putting them on the board takes a little while. Generally, if we're going to play a game like this, if I know we're going to do a 2-player day, I let them know ahead, hey, who do you want to be? What characters do you like? Do you want to be good or bad? And I'll set up kind of everything and then give them choices and some optimal things as to some things that would be good for this specific mission. That way they're still getting choices, but they'll be competitive, and that person isn't going to have to spend a lot of time, and you can jump into the game right away. So I think that's the best way to kind of approach this game. But it does take a while to set up, because the amount of content in the Batman Gotham City Chronicles is gigantic. As you can see, there's 60 goons. There are 33 villains.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff. It's got 2 gigantic core boxes, and then if you're going to add all of the other stuff, it's got 4 more boxes, I think, with everything else, with the new expansions. It's crazy. This is already a season 2 for it. Now, I hope that this gets fixed. There's a season 3 in the works right now that's supposed to fix a lot of the issues with this game in general. It's got Paul Grogan doing the rulebook, so it should be really straightforward to read afterwards. Because right now they did like this really rough French to English translation, and it did not work. A lot of people were turned off by it, didn't even want to play it because they didn't want to read the rules. And they're also introducing a storage solution for this whole thing, which I think will be perfect. I mean, if you get a good storage for this, that's going to speed up gameplay. I think that'll get it to the table as often as you like. So really excited to get those 2 things.
Did you paint your miniatures?
I never paint my miniatures. I tried. I hate painting miniatures. The only time I've ever painted miniatures was when we had the mandatory lockdown. I had about 3 months where we couldn't leave the house. So I was like, you know what? We're going to try painting miniatures, and I'm going to try it, and I'm going to do it right. I'm going to get the paints, and I'm going to do it. It's going to be great. And it wasn't great. I hated every moment of it. But I've got some great painted copies of like Anachrony and Cloudspire, games that I play a lot. So, I mean, I don't think I'll ever do it again. This might be something I request for like a birthday present, but I don't think I'll ever do it again. It is my least favorite thing to do. I find it so time consuming and so mind numbing. And I'm just like, can I just play the game, please? It's like, it gives me that
really game though. I like the heavier complexity is what it seems like as well. It seems like I like the tactile as well. But it seems like there's like a lot to do, and being kind of in the command seat is kind of a cool position. I don't think any of these games that we've looked at on either of our lists, you're kind of sitting in that command chair or this unit control type thing, and you're playing kind of against the game, right? Because you're going against goons, right?
So in this game, it is very much you have a mission that you need to complete. So there's a mission that both players have to do. So the last one we played, I was infiltrating the Gotham City Police Department, and my job was to steal evidence so that my bad guys could get away with whatever they were doing. And their whole thing was we need to prevent them from stealing that evidence, and we can do some other missions. We can like encrypt the codes on the computers so that way they can't erase that evidence. So they can make it harder. They could either just position themselves to take you out, or they could make it harder for you by doing their own specific objectives. So it's kind of neat. Both players, the good guys and the bad guys, have their own little objectives in addition to just, beating the pulp out of each other.
Nice.
So that's my number 2, one that I'm always excited to play, and that is Batman Gotham City Chronicles, specifically the Versus mode, which I think is much better than the normal version to play. Now, let's go ahead and jump into our number 1s. Let's hear it. What's your top 2-player game?
I'm just going to give you a guess. Do you have a guess?
I think that your top 2-player game is... Can I have a hint?
Boom.
Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect.
War Chest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you talked about this game a lot, so I'm not going to rehash it, but War Chest, great game. I want to get the expansions now. Siege and Nobility. Those are both 2 that just add more discs to the game, more variability. There's a Royal that's in the base set, the Royal Guard, and as he takes damage, you can get rid of stuff that's in your stack rather than in stuff that's in the field. So it's like stuff you didn't have to spend actions on are saving you. So that's one that I like. I think there are others that are in the Nobility that are kind of in the same, or they at least play off. I think it also adds an objective to this. So you've got some additional
Nobility expansion, and I think it's wonderful. The units it adds are like support classes more than anything else.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a good thing. Like, those are great. The support classes are wonderful.
That's exactly what that Royal Guard is in the base game. He's a support class. Like, he's just there to sit on top of your post that you've already taken.
And then the Nobility, the cards, I forget what they're called, but they're these cards that basically give you special abilities. They could be a weird type of movement. It's very
like decree or something.
Yes. They're very situational, but the way you activate them is you actually spend your royal coin. Generally, that coin is used to take initiative or buy something. You can't really do much with it, but this gives you an opportunity to do something with it. And I think that's super neat. It adds a new idea to the game, adds more variability to it. It has these very situational things you can plan for. It's really cool.
And there's a lot of room in this box. So expansions for it would be great, because half the box is empty. So have you played with Siege at all or seen anything?
I have Siege coming. It should be here on Friday. And
yeah, I think it just came out like last week or something, right?
Yep. So I probably won't play it for a while because it is a 2-player only game. But this is one that I'm glad that I have this one. I think this is the pinnacle of abstract games. As you say, it's your number 1. I'll let you give it all the praise it deserves. I think it's amazing.
I mean, it's number 1 game. So It is. It is interesting. A lot of my other games are really theme based. Something like Santa Monica or even the Lewis and Clark. I really enjoy a good theme. But this one stands on its own as being a little bit more abstract. You are playing kind of just like royal court. You've got knights, you've got archers, but they're kind of just tags for different abilities, and they play well. Like being an archer, being able to shoot 2 spaces away, it makes sense. But it's not like a heavy theme, and the artwork isn't like astounding. It's more of a graphic design type artwork. But yeah, the replayability, the quickness, the easy setup, especially with tactile, a tactile game that is easy to set up, you're like, oh yeah. But
And I like that you don't have to memorize thousands of patterns. It's you have these specific patterns that you're playing with. And those are the things you need to be aware with. And you don't even need to be that super aware because you'll kind of become familiar with them as they enter the board, which is neat. I mean, and it'll take a while before they get to you because it kind of takes a while to move things, but you've got time to kind of learn the game as you play it, which is really neat.
Yeah, we had mentioned you had mentioned a little bit earlier about the analysis paralysis, so like overthinking, and how this kind of like mitigates that a little bit by having this risk and randomness of which tokens you get.
Yes.
This is another game where I find it better to do the takesy backsies. So being like, "Ooh, you just killed my guy," or like, "I just moved into a space and I took my hand off." Most of the time we play like, "Okay, yeah, you took your hand off. Like that's your move," kind of, or that's at least the signal for like I'm done type thing. But this is one where I say like it's just more competitive if you don't let your guys die. So if you like move into a space where someone is going to kill you next turn, and it's like pretty obvious that you're going to get killed, then maybe take it back. Like play by your own house rules, but it makes it more competitive rather than like the easy snipe. You're like, dude, I had a token in my hand. I'm just gonna. So, yeah, this is great game.
Absolutely. All right. So my number one is, you said you knew what it was already?
I'm going to guess based on the complexity and theme of your previous one and how it seems like we're kind of getting more and more complex maybe. And also you play it with 2-player. You enjoy playing it with 2 players. I'm going to go with Marvel Champions.
It is actually not Marvel Champions.
What?
The most complex the most complex game is on this list is actually Batman. This one is a step down in complexity. So this is my favorite skirmish game. This is a game.
Marvel Champions is like high on your list of top.
Marvel Champions is my favorite game. Period.
Yeah,
favorite game. Period. I think it's my favorite. It's also a game that I play a lot solo. So I'm constantly playing it on my own. And I'm going to go at my own pace, and it's something that I can pull out. I bring it with me a lot of times when I go places. It's something that I enjoy playing on my own. But if I get a chance to play a 2-player game, this is the one that I will try to bring out the most because I think I think it does what it does so well. It's a skirmish game. You have a group of 3 versus your opponent's group of 3. They are very unique in the different ways that these champions work. You take their cards, you shuffle them up together. Each champion only has 6 cards to make a deck. So you're having a deck of 18 cards that you're going to be taking, and you'll be fighting and trying to score 5 points. That's it. You want to score 5 points. Any idea? It's very new. It's very new. It came out the end of last year. It's my favorite game from 2020. This is super fantasy.
I want to check it out now.
This is
okay. I have heard this is like a cool one. Yeah, this for 2-player especially.
So good. It plays 2 or 4 players very similarly to War Chest. You know, play the 1-on-1 or the 2-on-2. You can also have 2 separate games of 1 versus 1, which is honestly the coolest thing. You can just have 2 people playing their own games at the same time, which is really neat. But the premise of the game is you have 3 champions. You take their decks, you shuffle them together, you draw a hand of 5, and you go for it. You are playing completely tactically, but you're playing strategically as well because you have this river of objectives that are going to be coming in, and you're trying to complete them the best you can to score points. You're trying to get 5 points. So the objectives look something like this. They're very straightforward, very easy to track. It could be you need to have one of your champions next to this statue. You need to have a champion next to every statue. You need to have killed 2 of your opponent's champions. things like that. Have a champion adjacent to the red area, have more guys in a space than another one. So these objectives drive the decisions you're going to be making with your characters, but they also are going to be basically dictating how you're going to play your cards in order to disrupt your opponents as well. So it's your plan as well as messing up your opponent's plan, because you can anticipate what the objectives your opponents are going to be going for as well. And the cool thing about this is you don't score the objectives until the start of your next turn. So even if you satisfy one during your turn, you won't actually score it till later. So as you can see, there's a little track here. As the game goes, every turn, these will slide down, and they start being worth nothing, and then they are worth 1 point. Then they're worth 2 points for 2 turns. So there is also a critical time where you want to be succeeding in these objectives. The game itself is played on this giant grid-based system, and to take actions, you're going to be playing cards from your hand. And these cards have different colors. You're only allowed to play 3 color. You're only allowed to do 3 things based on the colors per turn. You can either play a card for that color, or you could do like a basic action, like you could move or heal or punch for 1 damage or something like that. But generally, you're going to be wanting to play these cards. But every round, you draw 5 randomly, so you're not sure what you're going to actually be able to do until the end of your turn. Then you can start planning for it on your opponent's turn. So I really like the idea of the tactical nature. It reminds me a lot of War Chest, with the way you're getting your cards every turn and you have to deal with what you got and make the best choices. You have multiple uses for your colors, not necessarily for the cards this time, but you also have lots of choices in the cards. You might get a hand of 5 red cards and be like, oh snap, I can only play 1 of these. And then I'm going to take 2 basic actions. I got to deal with it. This is what I got to do. But there are some cool ways that you can mitigate this luck. A lot of the basic actions have the plan tag attached to them, so you can stack cards on the top of your deck, so you can kind of predict your future turns. And the basic actions themselves are not terrible. They're not the worst things in the world. They're moves. They can damage through armor. They can also heal, or that plan action that I was talking about. So I love the variety of the champions. Each champion has their own ways to play. Some have armor. Some have different abilities once you kill them. And when you do kill your opponent's units, you get to flip your champions over, and they have a special ability with increased stats. And you also get a point when you take out enemy things. So there's a lot to love about this game, a whole bunch of variability. They just did a Kickstarter recently with that doubled the amount of champions that you can play with. It's super successful. Really like this one. I was very impressed. This is a game that I played at 2 players at a friend's house, and I just thought to myself, I need to have this game. This is going in the collection. I've got to buy this. It plays well.
Yeah, this would be one that I'd want to probably play first. Like, looking at the game, it is very saturated and very busy. There's a lot going on like just this page that you have up right now. I don't know what's on those cards unless I get close to the screen, like what's happening. And then you're the other photo that has the blue, red, yellow. Those are like very saturated colors, and it's just like, wow, that like it's very loud. So there's from one of the first pass of things that I look at, a lot of the aesthetic that I have for just game selection in general. First pass is, how does it look? Is it good artwork? And for me, that was maybe something why I overlooked this game, just because it is so busy what's going on these cards. But the mechanics sound like they're great. Especially they sound a lot like War Chest, where you've got different guys who do different things, and then you put them all into a deck, and then now you play. So there's like this ease of setup, ease of play, lots of variability. You got this interrelationship between these guys, and then your opponent has the same thing. So everyone's always got to be on their toes. Same thing with like Santorini. You just got to be on your toes because everything's changing. You're not playing the same decks every time. You're not playing the same thing every time. So the replayability, a strong 2-player game, I think, that is going to play over and over, has this replayability. I haven't one of my honorable mentions, just because I've been playing it a lot, is Wingspan. Enjoy playing it. It's not on my top list because it's almost like you're playing a solitaire game. You're like, I'm building my nest thing and they're building their nest thing, and we'll kind of compare scores at the end of the game. But honestly, we weren't even really doing much to counter each other. So that's kind of why it's more of like a solitaire 2-player game, and really can play at any count. But I think a lot of these games that are on both of our lists have this like, all right, we're on our toes, we're playing against each other. Like, these are pretty competitive games for the most part. And the thing that makes them top games is the replayability.
I completely agree. I think that the variety while keeping the simplicity is huge. If you can teach somebody a game like that, but the complexity comes from the cards or the pieces, I think that's wonderful. I think the best designed games are the ones with simple rule sets but high complexity based on the choices and the cards and the kind of resources you're getting as you play. So wonderful. Now, I know you think this game looks a little bombastic and a little complicated, but it's got
a lot going on.
It is the most simple game I've ever played in this style. You play a card, you move based on the boots, you shoot based on the yellow, you deal damage based to the red, and you got an ability on the bottom. And the best thing about
it makes sense. It makes sense.
The best thing about this too is you're only going to have 6 cards from each character. And so you're going to get to know those cards really well. You're going to get to play them. You're going to see them multiple times. Like, oh, I love this card. I was like, oh man, I can't use this card now. I just put it aside. So the analysis that you're going to take in on your turn is very short. You're like, okay, I got to pick one of these color cards. I can play these 2. Let's see how it goes. Let's do it. And I want to be there. So I feel like the objective system really helps with giving an idea of what you want to be doing. The cards, the colors, the categorization there is very helpful with kind of limiting your decisions, but also giving you tough decisions because you have to pick. And I think it's really good.
It sounds like what I wanted out of Imperial Settlers of the North, where you had like these multi-factions. I wanted there to be kind of this more combination of being able to use maybe different guys or even just a little more customization or something, something a little bit more. And it sounds like this really fills that niche of combining that, like war chest feel with, the card-based game and the deck and things. So, this sounds cool. Looking at the logo too, it looks like a Super Bowl, like Brawl, like it looks like a Super Bowl logo.
It's really cool. It reminds me of like Super Smash Brothers Brawl meets fantasy football. Like something like you're coming to this arena to watch these 6 heroes duke it out, and then it's an arena. They're excited, and the cool thing is your characters never die, so they do get knocked out. You can always bring them back in, so you never feel like you are behind, except on points, obviously. But that's something that you can quickly remedy by playing your cards well. So it's cool. I like this one a lot. Well, thanks so much, Jordan. Any closing thoughts before we finish up here?
I did have one other honorable mention. Netrunner was one. It's a asymmetric game. I think that's a lot of these games are not asymmetric. The kind of the hero control, that was a unique one with the Batman one. Android does asymmetric really well. The theme is super strong. Getting to play it, I think, is what keeps it off of the top 5, where you got to know the cards. There's 60 cards that you got to know, and if you're playing one versus the other, but the theme is so strong that, like, if you do build a deck or go online and look at like what was the top deck for a builder, you can go put that deck together for what a cost of a few packs or whatever, and then have a set of Android Corp first runner decks to play the game, so you can kind of make it its own standalone game and never kind of touch it later. It's kind of take out the LCG version of it, the LCG part of it, so that way it's just a standalone game. But the theme I really enjoy. You've got this big bad corp they're trying to make the credits, and then you got the hacker guys who are trying to get in. So it's used in other things too. There's a standalone game. I think it's a revamp from a while ago as well. There's a book series. There's like 2 or 3 books that go into the world of Android. So you go up the beanstalk's like going to the moon, and so you kind of like build this world. So it's good world building too. So as like a story concept, you don't see it anywhere else either. Like, it's not like, I don't know, like a Pokemon kind of thing. Like, you can see Pokemon translate to a bunch of different mediums. Like, Android really exists in this small little thing, and it's kind of a very niche, but it has a lot of like futuristic dystopia potential type thing that a lot of other media in that same space kind of leverages. but this combines a lot of it in one font. So
I really like Android Netrunner. It's one that is a little daunting. It's hard to get competitive LCGs played, in my opinion. That's why I generally
agreed.
cooperative ones.
Yeah.
So like Marvel Champions, Arkham Horror, those just get played so much more. So it's not one that I will ever get for the library here, but I really like the idea. I love that you are breaking into the system. You're like, if you're the bad guy, you're setting up these servers for people to like break through. You're essentially setting traps for the runners, and I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
So I like
the theme of like being the corporate and like I am the bad guy and you're like I'm trying to keep you out while I do my objective, and then the other guy's like just trying to pound in, doing anything he can to like either create a virus on the computer or something. And the theme is just very strong, especially when you like go. If you like LCGs, you like building, or if you're like building decks in general, there's like a lot of content for you to do that. But if you can go pick a theme and like all these like the top decks or whatever, there's like the for the corpse, they each have their own flavor. So if you're like, oh, I like cloners and geneticist type people, and I want to be that corp, you can choose that as your theme, and then pick a few of the top things that they use. So it's a cool idea, and the asymmetry makes it really unique to me as well. Like you do have the corp, you do have the runner who, and you can choose to be whichever one you want, and then where you switch it up.
Excellent choice for honorable mention. So if I'm going to throw in an honorable mention, I'm going to include just quickly here. It's going to be Codenames Duet. This is a game that I pretty much play exclusively with my wife, and it is one of my favorite cooperative two-player games. I just covered this in one of my recent lists, and it's wonderful. It really is. It has this little tiny this mission system where you're going around the world, and it kind of ramps up the difficulty and the challenge. And it's a game that I suck at, frankly. I'm not good at it, but it is fun to come and play. This is one that we just played a bunch of during this last Christmas break, and we played maybe 20 games of it, and we won once. And that's great, though, because this is the first win in like 2 years. So, hey, we'll take it. It's one that I really like. The fact you're playing at the same time is really neat. It always ensures that you're always constantly engaged, and the smirks and the ideas, the looks that you give each other when you play this game are just a lot of fun, because you hope, you pray that they know what you're talking about, but sometimes it just doesn't click.
That sounds like a good one. That's one I might have to get, because I enjoy Codenames, because you can play that pretty much with anyone. And but yeah, Codenames would be good. Yeah.
It's great. Turning that system into cooperation was genius. And you could play this with multiple people as well. It could go up to multiple players, but I think 2 is really where it shines, because it's about you and that other person. And I think that's important. So what I learned from this list is you need to go get Santa Monica. It sounds wonderful. I love the idea of the cards kind of making both the pier side and the ocean front. I think this looks really cool. It looks super fun.
The aesthetic is very nice.
That's one that I will want to play. So I'm going to visit you here in a little bit. So I'll bring Super Fantasy Brawl. You set out Santa Monica. We'll have a good time.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jordan, for joining me on the stream. We worked out a few of the kinks. If you've been watching this whole time, you'll know that I stopped doing the PowerPoint thing in the middle of it, because those title cards honestly didn't add much, and they took a long time and kept me unfocused.
You recently had a stream that was with Luke from Meeple.
Yes, Broken Meeple.
Broken Meeple. Yeah. I enjoyed that, where it had the kind of the comments that he like put as like an icon or something, or even just like it added like this layer of professionalism, I felt like. So if you do get back into that, I think it adds value. But
I totally agree with you. It looked sick, but I'll be honest, I'm having a hard time like managing this stuff on this side, as well as keeping my thoughts in my head so that I can actually speak eloquently and well. I'm ready.
You just need practice, or to hire someone.
Oh yeah, one of those things. Maybe I can get
Corn to do it.
Here. Okay, that'll work too. So
a little grim one. Yeah.
Perfect.
All
awesome.
Right.
Thanks so much, Jordan, again. I appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments about what we talked about here, please leave it down in the comments below. We'll go ahead and trim this up a little bit, then put it back on. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. See ya. It's Monday, huh?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
Oh, perfect. All right. See you later.